So with Just the Nicest Couple, it's another missing person story. But for the first time, I wrote about a missing man, because I think that missing women, it's a story we've all heard. Unfortunately, that's what dominates the news and real life. It's so often the women who go missing. So I really wanted to explore what happens when an adult male goes missing, and to see, is it the same story ultimately, or is it going to be a little different? And there are a lot of complications when an adult goes missing to begin with. They're not necessarily missing. There's no proof that they haven't just left, on their own, which you can do. It's in a person's right to do that. So the investigation does run into different complications that I didn't experience, maybe in other books where there was a missing child. So with both Nina and Christian, it was fun. This was one of my more fun books to write because I just, they were both going to do anything, to solve. Nina's looking for her missing husband, and Christian has some information, and he's trying to do anything to protect his wife. And they're going to do anything, to make this happen. And so it was so kind of outside of my own comfort zone, because I think that I'm a much more guarded person. I don't know that I would make many of the choices that they're making. And just to kind of like give into that and just say they're going to do it all. They're going to push everything to the limit. They're going to cross, legal boundaries, moral boundaries to get the answers that they need. And it was liberating, in all honesty, to be able to do that and just see what happens. And I considered alternate endings to this book, which I think, I had a different ending in mind at a certain point. And then I thought maybe that won't be satisfying enough. And so, I switched gears and went a different way with it. So there definitely are points that I come to, like, maybe that's not enough. The reader wants more than that. And so, I'm always thinking about what is going to be the most satisfying ending for the reader. There are ebbs and flows with this whole career. My first book did really well. And then the next couple, the sales were down, and I wasn't sure, where was this going to go? And then things started to go back up again, and the last few books have done really well, and it's been a thrill. But, I know that's, you kind of have to be in it for the long haul, because you're going to have peaks and valleys with this career. So any new author should know that there are going to be high points and low points, but you just keep writing, keep your head down, keep writing, and it comes back up. It's always exciting. I mean, you never know. I mean, I think 4 of my books now have hit the bestseller list. And the first was The Good Girl, my first book, but it didn't hit it right away. It took almost an entire year. It was after the book had come out in paperback and my second book was releasing. It was only then that, it hit the bestseller list. And I mean, it was amazing. I mean, when I first sold The Good Girl, I had no expectations. I knew how hard publishing was going to be. And the fact that I had sold the book was, I felt like a dream come true. So when it hit the bestseller list, I was completely elated. And that feeling, it never changes. That bestseller list is so hard to get on, and I would never take it for granted. But my editor, she never calls me, but literally the only time she calls me is if a book hits the bestseller list. So I remember with Just the Nicest Couple, I was still on book tour, and I was in a hotel getting ready for an event that night, and my phone rang, and her name, was right there on the caller ID. So I knew, and I mean, I think I cried. I cry every time. So it's a wonderful feeling. So in She's Not Sorry, I created a story, and I created Megan and Megan's, ICU world to work with that twist. And, I think that Megan was probably the character of any that I've had to do the most research for. I knew nothing about life as an ICU nurse. And, even just from, little bits about like her day, okay, she arrives to work. Well, what's the first thing she does? I didn't know. So I had to do a lot of research, and thankfully I was able to really find a wealth of information online that I was able to use. But I also have a good number of friends who are ICU nurses. So I relied on them a lot. When I was in the writing, that drafting stage, I'd have my list of questions for them, some really over the top, which I can't go into detail. Once you read the book, those you'll know what I mean. But I had so many questions for them. And then I actually had one nurse friend that I didn't ask any questions of, because I wanted her to read, a draft and be surprised with the way things were going, and to see, it was really important to me that if I was going to do that and I was going to make Megan this ICU nurse, I wanted it to be so accurate and just so, so believable. And I didn't want to make any mistakes there at all. So I definitely feel like I did my research there. The few reviews that I've read from current nurses, who read the book or an early version of the book, thankfully have all said that it felt super accurate. So that made me feel good. But there was so much research there. And, it's not even the big details, but it's those minor details. Like I said, she gets to work and what does she do? As a nurse, and I say this in the book, but it's in their character to be nurturing. That's what draws them to the profession. It's just they want to take care of humans, and yet there's this line. They can't let themselves get emotionally attached because it will break them. And that was something that, just as a person myself, I feel like that would be such a constant struggle. And so I explore that into great detail there, and where is that line? And, what is it about Caitlin's mother, especially, that makes Megan kind of like want to connect with her? And, they have things in common. And so I was able to pull on some of that, which, gets back to Megan's daughter, Sienna, and just kind of being able to pull that out a little bit. And, she has something in common with this woman. And so I relied on that a little bit, I think, to kind of encourage Megan to break this rule that she has of not getting too close to her patients and their families. But I learned so much about the ins and outs, and just, how emotionally draining it is for a nurse. And like you said, 12 hours a day on their feet. And just, I can't even imagine it. As a reader, one of the most kind of off-putting things to me is when you have a book with like 25 characters that you're introduced to in a short span of time. And I want to make an outline of who everybody is. And I don't ever want to do that. I want my reader to feel like, they know who these characters are. And so there's definitely a balance there. But I also think that, a real world doesn't just have 5 people in it. You're running into so many people. And these other characters also add, potential for red herrings. We don't know which one of them is involved, or if any of them are involved in what has happened to Caitlin. So I use them. I try to be really tactful in the way that I use them. I try to be really cautious about, sometimes reintroducing them and, things like that, to not throw a reader, and to just kind of help a reader along with that, so they don't ever feel like there's too much going on.